But welcome back to our weekly installment of the Lore Report. We're excited to be talking and chatting with you guys yet again. I'm here with the fabulous Wonderland and Sky as we get to talk everything Continental Championships, the meta. What's happening is we are literally a week away from, you guys being on the happiest place on Earth. Maybe, riding a splash
Yes.
mountain, building a lightsaber. I don't know, whatever else that you feel like you want to do at Disneyland. I'm still. Luke said to
Is it?
refresh the ever even the Eventbrite today, and I was like, maybe him telling me it's gonna happen, and it's just gonna be the ticket. I still haven't gotten one, but even if that's the case, I'm very pumped for you guys to get to go and getting to watch the stream and everything else. But how's playtesting going? How are you guys feeling going into the biggest Lorcana tournament yet?
Well, like all DLCs, I do not know what I want to play. I know what I want to play in my heart of hearts, but I don't think it's good, so I'm not going to play it. Just like all the other events. Maybe the last second I'll just be like, fine, I'll play the deck I don't want to play the most, and someone will hand me a good list and I'll win again. I mean, we all need our Derricks in our lives.
Everybody needs some bannable guidance from time to time in a card game, right?
Yes.
I think I would agree with Luke. I am in the same boat. Of course, I'm a blue steel diehard, and I would love to feel great about playing that like it's a meta breaking deck. Um, but I'm not completely convinced it is. I think it's in a little bit of worse spot than it wasn't for Seattle, just because the meta kind of shifted towards super hyper aggro and then red blue. But I think I'm much more likely to just end up playing that than kind of cave like Wonderland said and just play somebody a deck that somebody handed them. Like if I actually think it's like a fantastic pick and it's like super good, I probably will. But if I'm being honest with myself, I'll probably just play what I'm comfortable with, which is blue steel.
You are quite known to be a blue steel main.
Yeah,
Yes, it is.
I played like some red blue today, and I was like, why am I playing this deck? I feel no joy from playing this. I look at my hand, and I get a headache, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could just play a Chicha and do this and that. And all the things I like about blue steel, I can't do with red blue. So
Have you
It's
played very
different.
many games as mines yet?
I have played a decent amount of games as mines, and I mean that deck is fine. Like if that's
But it
you
doesn't
learn,
spark joy.
it sparks more joy than red blue, just because I can like it kind of relate.
Hey,
Like red blue is like blue steel, but with like all the stupid stuff that nobody likes to play against. So you take out the fun and put in the stupid cards. So, but mine's is just like whatever. It's like an aggro deck. You just curve out, and at least maybe it's just because I can play a lot of games of mines versus playing red blue that takes forever to finish games. So you can actually test a bunch of different matchups. That might be an aspect that influences, but I don't know. I don't mind playing Ember Steel. I
are
always
you
said that
sure there's no joy in double ice blocking something and then Madame Medusa? Like that's a great feeling.
people
Says
don't
the
even
red
play
blue
Medusa
main.
anymore, but no, I don't derive joy from dropping massive Sisus, and yeah, I don't know. It's like blue steel. Like I feel like it's just much more interactive than what red blue does. Like red blue is just like, okay, I get to a point and I do like when you go in second as red blue, it just feels like if your opponent does what they want in the matchups where you should lose going second, it's just that's what it is. Like there's no like way you can kind of come back. Whereas blue steel, I feel like there's some crazy openings that I can do versus aggro and kind of like scrap my way back, but I don't feel that at all with red blue. It's just like, okay, did I double ramp into B prep, or did I have the perfect like Ramatala into Maui into like Sisu plus Brawl the next turn to stop them?
Yeah, Brawl feels bad into hyper aggro just in general. Ugh. Um, yeah, definitely having those bodies, but I get it. Um, where do you think Blue Steel lands? If you were to tier list it, where it's at right now?
Oh, you just want to use the tier list that quickly, huh? You
I
just
do. I
let me
see it.
use it. Let me use it.
Pull it up. Yeah, I guess we can do blue steel first. I think I'd probably put it in A tier. I don't think it's going into Seattle the way the meta was, I'd probably put it in S tier. Like I'm specifically talking about no wheel. I think wheel is a little bit not
Better?
quite up
Yeah.
there. It can get ripped by Ursula. It's the
You said
format's
S
so
tier?
no.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, no. I wish I could, but yeah, I think wheel is a little bit too. The format's too fast. There's so
He
many
said
decks
A
that you just
tier, yeah.
refill. So many decks refill their hands, like or can just drop their hand and you give them a free refill, and it's terrible. Red blue, it never feels good to wheel. Even the non-quill version, it's still they're ramping. So yeah, I think it's good. I don't think on paper the every matchup indicates that it's like an S tier deck, but I'll still play it. It's good enough for me.
Do you
You
think?
you agree or disagree with that? I don't know how
Yeah,
much
you
you've
think it's A
played, but
tier?
I think there's going to be a lot of decks in A tier. I think A tier is basically a deck you should expect to be piloted by good players that, if played properly, is could very easily win the event. Has some bad matchups, has some great matchups, but is definitely beatable, which is why it's not an S tier. But like, it can beat plenty of the other A tier decks, right? Like, its worst matchup is multiple Daisy. Lots of decks just lose to that, but this doesn't really lose to much else. Like, it's pretty solid choice, I think.
it's always tough to tell with Lorcana decks because so many decks have the effect of okay, when this deck goes first and it does what it wants to do, it should win against almost every deck. There's not many matchups where it's so bad that you shouldn't have a chance going first. So a lot of like the data that you should derive from like preparing for a competitive event is how often
On the
can you
draw.
what matchups can you win on the draw? Because you need to have some where you can win on the draw, or else you're just not going to 2-0 unless your opponent just bricks. But this deck is like, especially wheel. It feels so many matchups feel like if you're going second, you just can't really do what you want to do and expect to like have enough tempo to stop them from winning. I was messing around with mid range a lot. I really wanted to try to make it work for this event, but um, what I kind of did was I really liked ramping on 3 and skipping my turn 4, and you can sing like a strength or a storm with your guy that you ramped with, whether it's Mickey or Pleakley. So you could potentially throw that in there in that type of build, and you could sing with them as well, and it wouldn't be the worst. But it'd probably be a deal where it's the games where you go first are the games where you're able to do that because you usually need to sing like a tempo regain spell if you played just like a Mickey on turn 3.
I think Emerald, Ruby, and Amber, Sapphire, and Ruby Steel just they just have not found a place really. It's kind of sad. Amber Sapphire was a real archetype in set one. Some people even like thought it was the best archetype. Um, and it was like it beat up on Ruby Amethyst. Like it could beat Ruby Amethyst, but it couldn't beat Amber Steel going wide. But it had its fair shot in the meta. I think in the Invitational, multiple people played it. I know Jeebus played it a whole bunch. But currently, like it can't perform at the moment. I don't know what it needs to perform. Um, these are kind of the ink
Removal.
combinations that they 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 don't mix properly, right? Like normally amber needs a removal based color like ruby or steel to pop off, or it needs another aggro like combination like amethyst or emerald to just like be aggressive and do its thing. It's kind of like identity is aggressiveness and some singing and some discard, so it overlaps with emerald on discard, and speaking of emerald discard, I don't do you think it's worth a B? Like, do you think it's even a B?
That was a it's a great question. I was just curious to see where you guys are because it's not been a topic of conversation. It hasn't really done or performed very well in this the current meta of where we're at on the super discard. The you have forgotten me. Um,
I think
I
it's like a deck of the past. Like I think the reason why nobody's playing it just because it very quickly fell off and it does not mesh well with the current like meta. So a lot of the meta sped up. There's a lot less targets in a lot of those decks for like stuff like Bare Necessities or even Ursula. Um, and then red blue is like I don't know. It's that's a matchup where you have plenty of stuff to rip with Bare Necessities and are always going to have stuff to discard when you want to. But at the same time, it's like they ramp up to one big Sisu, and that sometimes just wins them the game, and that feels awful. Like you did everything you wanted to, you ripped all their cards, and they found like one big Sisu and lost you the game.
So B or C?
Yeah.
That sounds like a
C,
C.
C, C, yeah,
That
C
sounds
tier, I
like a
think.
C. Still, like, is a consideration. Like, sure, you don't expect to see this, but like, I feel when you complain to your friends after losing to this after the round is a lot less of a complaint than when you lose to Emerald Ruby or Amber Sapphire, or like, you know what I mean? Like these are so rogue that you're just like, who, you don't expect it, right? Like, and maybe they broke the format and they definitely have no right to complain, but
Maybe it has a
kind
chance
of
against Diggy Diggy Hole. Now that I think about it, if that was like filled, but I don't know. Maybe.
I don't.
possibly.
My main gripe with the deck is that it relies so heavily on muses and like bouncing to take back
Well,
any
that
tempo.
is
And that the decks are so
it's
fast that yeah, but the decks are just so fast that you're not playing that till turn 4, and that like they have established
I
so
would
much by that point.
I would think that its matchup against some aggro decks is remarkably better than you'd think. Um,
It's got a lot of answers.
but
It might be. I'm. This is all. I haven't tested this at all. This is all just from kind of like theory crafting and seeing what the deck did, like when people were playing it.
I don't think its matchup is like, it definitely can't beat
Imagine if that had the
green
like the
steel, traditional
staff,
green steel. Who knows?
the
Maybe this
Maleficent
is
staff.
secretly like this. Like maybe
It's
a
going to
proper
win the
build.
event.
Like if the projected meta of red blue and like, I mean, we'll just, obviously these are A tier decks. If not here, like they could be the only two S's. This could be the only S. We'll get to those. But if the projected meta is like this could be absurd if it actually was good against tier, because
That's my
muses,
thought. Yeah.
and then if it had the proper way to not just lose to a Sisu, that could be good there. And the same thing here is like muses is rough. I mean, they definitely could Tinkerbell double sword or double sword, you know, double tinker, all sorts of things. But like it's this was its bad matchup. So like the reason it fell off after Toronto, like as soon as Zan did well with this, like this was bad. But I think this was also secretly not good before then because the red blue players figured out how to beat it.
That was probably my best match. It was like round 6 before 7. I beat a guy, I'm now spacing on his name, who qualified for Continentals, those on green yellow. And I think I came back down like I was like it was crazy. That was probably I was most proud of match.
Top deck was
Beating
Sisu
that
and
during yeah.
got
Yeah,
back in the
exactly.
game.
I had to like
He's
dime
hype.
Sisu Tamatoa. It was crazy. He had like 19 lore. I was terrified.
Yeah. And now Ruby has Shark, so sometimes they have Reach there and Treachery. Who knows? Like the next DLC, like
He's
they,
back.
he also brought a list to Seattle. Like he brought the burn version of um, Ruby Amethyst, right? So there could be a world that there's a Shark variant of that to be a new archetype that somehow does things. The issue is I don't see how, like, his bad matchup was Emerald Steel. He still made day 2. He dodged it or he did well enough against it, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I don't know if that's because I'm assuming the Diggy Hole is similar, right? It's just like actually faster than you and it forces you to play control, and Doc doesn't care if you randomly board wipe once and their lore is faster because it's double pipped instead of singled.
Testing Diggy Diggy Hole. Speaking of which, do you think the 5 like to getting to Kita? Do you think there's better options? I haven't tested with like is Robin Hood more interesting
Well,
or maybe something.
if anyone wants to have some fun, you can watch my stream from yesterday where I swapped out a few cards in the deck and we put in my enchanted Snow White. I drew it once against red blue and I promptly lost the game because I drew it. I had docked with 4 ink in play and I drew Storm, Snow White, and then I drew Storm for turn and I just lost.
Was
It's
that the
like, oh,
Night
okay.
Snow White?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
played against the mirror and traditional amber steel like 4 times before that, and wanted to actively draw it and never drew it. And then I put in some grumpies and some sleepies, and sleepy was the only one that I was like, all right, I could see myself trying this more. The grumpy was just obviously not good, and the Snow White really hurt myself. But I had cut Akita for the Snow White, and I was like, all right. I don't know. I think Kita's pretty good in the non-red blue matchups.
yeah,
I don't know that all the matchups that it's good into because I've just mainly tested blue steel against it. But when I was trying to play the mid range version of blue steel, that card felt so oppressive to play against. Like
yeah,
the way my curve would go would be I'd play Mickey on 3, ramp to 5, and then the way I'd regain tempo, I'd play like two drops and a 1 drop, and I just flood the board and like be ready. Okay, they get one more turn where they can quest out, and then I'm swinging with everything and can potentially clear everything. And then they dropped the key and it was just I could hit nothing. It was just over. So it got to a situation where if you did that curve going second and they flooded and you flooded the next turn, you pretty much just had to pray that they didn't keep Akita or their last 2 cards wasn't Akita in there because there was just no way to come back. You could sing like one song, remove like Akita or something that quested for 2, but they just quest out with everything.
Yeah, the best way to kind
that's
of
fair. I
fight
only tested
that
against red blue, and
is
it
Fox
felt
and
the
Crab,
worst.
I think.
Ox and Crab.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Fox
the
is
things that get around it.
yeah Maui.
Outside, well, I mean, if you have Maui, they probably have brawls and and Sisu's, and then it's like, yeah,
It
those
just
are the
doesn't
best
feel
things
good.
against it. Yeah,
Yeah, I only really tested against red blue, and I'm like, this doesn't feel amazing all the time because you get out to like 12, 13 lore, and then they just kind
Yeah,
of stabilize.
that matchup
And
you just ink it usually.
yeah,
It's fine. I don't know what you would replace it with if you were going to replace it with something. Um, I guess before he had what like more Pluto bodyguard in the Candias list, which that card's fine. I don't. I guess it like protects against the Maui. And Maui has to trade against it, but I think in
and it's a
like
big character for Rapunzel.
it is
yeah,
it's another Rapunzel target. But sometimes in like the mirror, if you play that card, they can always it's like the deck can ping super easily, so they can just ping it and then hit your Pluto with like
and
a Calhoun. If they like sing a storm and hit it with a Calhoun, then it's pretty bad for you.
red blue. I just wish I had like 4 more Lawrence. That was what I was hoping for. I was like, if I could just run 8, this would feel a lot better.
Yeah, Lawrence is tough. He's a tank, man.
Yeah,
Sometimes if
that
you don't
four, that
have
four.
2 ice cubes, it's tough. He sticks around.
But yeah, S tier for sure for Diggy Diggy Hole.
I think so.
What do
Yeah,
you think?
it's like a baseline deck of
It's the boogeyman at the moment.
it can beat everything going first, and that's like such a strong attribute. And it might not only beat it, it can just crush most of the decks going first. And I think it has some of that swing potential that Steel Song has going second, where you can regain tempo by singing songs and into a lot of matchups. Um, its main, I think, weakness is that you do struggle a lot to beat Red Blue going second. And if Red Blue is the most played deck, it's not a great spot to be in, just going 1-1 all day. You really have to open like triple Daisy. I think is one of the only ways where that
Daisy's
happens, or they
big.
brick, which Red Blue can brick. It bricks less now in this format with Sail the Azurite
As
Steed,
Hazard
but
see, yeah. Yeah, speaking of the boogeyman, that would have been Emerald Steel, obviously the last format. Where do we think that falls in the tier list? Is this A? Is it S? Do we feel like it's figured out now that, we have more answers with the genie of purple red? Like, is it still there? Because we moved down Emerald Amber. Did it move down too? Or is
I
it
mean, it's
still just as
definitely
strong?
above. It's either in
Yeah.
B or A, in my opinion. I think a version of it could make it A. I think the right version of it could be A. I think it's it's probably B if we're gonna be picky. If I'm gonna be really picky, if I'm gonna try to make A really small, I might move that down too.
Is it because we feel blue red's better into it now? Do we feel like Diggy Diggy Hole has some answers? And same with, I feel like it can still be
Yeah, I
strong into
mean,
that.
mine is a great answer to the deck. That's really
Yeah.
potent.
like,
And then on top of the songs that you already have to kill their first Diablo,
So the
It's
first, like initially, Emerald Steel was advantaged, or it was even, but they had Ursula 2, right? But now they only play 8 songs. So Ursula 2 misses so often that it's a liability. If I'm just spending 2 ink on turn 2 to make a 1/3 quest for 1, like that's a 1
Oof.
drop that people don't even play, and I'm spending 2 ink for it?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, oh, I get to look at your hand. That's.
yeah, you can't rip the mine, so it's like a if you're going first, I honestly probably keep the mine if you have like a happy or something. It's just such an
A threat.
nice, yeah, it's such a
Yeah.
threat to anything they drop. And
Uh,
like it's I think the way you rank a deck like this, it's like its strongest opens or what it wants to do is Diablo Shift is just how many matchups is Diablo Shift even like gonna win you the game going first, or how many matchups will Diablo Shift go in second, like bring you back the tempo because you can sing a storm or something. And I think the matchup spread is just not quite as good for those like nut opens where you shift Diablo early, Cove, or sing a song. Like I think Red Blue just got stronger into it and it got more consistent. And so that matchup probably is, a little bit better. And then yeah, there's a lot of decks that can just kind of deal with the Diablo shift.
yeah, and honestly, last format before Maui Shark, it was you had the board wiper, like the big Sisu, but now also having Maui Shark of just an evasive body threat that now if you turn your Diablo sideways, now not only am I getting rid of your Diablo, I'm now getting a song back as well. So that's pretty
Yeah, I'd be
crazy.
curious to see how much that actually happens though. Like how often do you
I
get
feel
to
like late
6 and
game,
yeah, I mean,
like
it might happen very often. I just have never seen a Maui Shark attack into a Diablo. And probably just because people don't play the deck anymore.
yeah,
I have had my Diablos hit by a Maui Shark because of a Talisphere.
mm,
Oh, because give it rush, yeah. Because
Yeah.
usually you just wouldn't. The card isn't worth
I
giving them
think
the song, right?
like, you have to be wary at 8 ink that they could play Vitalisphere and rush it with Shark. Or you have to, or you just have to, make sure that if they play Vitalisphere, not to play into Shark. Like,
yeah,
if it's
yeah,
on board trick, the Shark's there, right?
yeah.
It's terrifying. Yeah, Jane said that Emerald Steel is secretly A when I moved it up. I mean it could be. It the mat it could win an event still, I think. The event I won with it, I felt that it was unfavored to red blue as well. Um the question is red blue is is Ruby Sapphire secretly an S? Is it just an A? Are we going to rank the A tier? Let's do that.
Mm. It's
See, there's
always good, but like it just hasn't won an
so
event. That's the other thing. Like, can we put it in S tier because it just hasn't broken through?
if these are ranked in order, is there a difference between being the last A and being the first B?
You talking about blue steel or red blue?
A blue.
Because red blue won an EU DLC. It was the items version, but it
Oh
won.
yeah, I guess fair, fair, fair. Not the normal one. Yes, it but did win Bologna with the items version with the queen. That's true. The fair.
Actually, I think
And
I think that was crazier than like
two
That was
the
the
lanes win.
the insane Atlanta list that won that nobody expected. In my opinion, I think it was crazier that the items deck
Red
won.
blue was a deck though, and I think against in the mirror, if they didn't know what you were on, they could take some conservative plays, and then they played like that, and it just oh no, like all of a sudden the things that they were saving, like some extra dragons, didn't really matter because there was just Tamatoa activate time. That was before Hideaway
Right.
yeah.
was around. So
I
the
just
whole meta
thought
was
that deck
different.
was lost to so much going second. There was
Yeah.
pretty much everything you wanted to do with that deck and the way it was built. It was just not designed to win going second against almost everything except maybe the mirror.
It took
Uh,
forever just to play it too because there was so much to resolve on the board. It's just like
yeah,
like if it was crazy.
the games where you won, you were like you were in for the long haul. You were there to set up and like go for an OTK pretty much.
Yeah, Sh- Sean brought it to a local like the week before Bologna, and I remember playing this. I'm like, this is the dumbest thing ever because we went to time, and I'm like, this is like 2 games. I'm like, how do we go to time? So, oh man, it's no, that is probably the craziest win of the DLCs.
Because my thought is that so the Atlanta that deck was crazy. Nobody expected it. But at least that deck was just like like a curve deck, right? You just play a character each turn, and that can always win. Like regardless if it's like super strong or there's some crazy thing that you're trying to do with your curve. As long as you just play characters each turn, you can win going first or second if your opponent doesn't have the greatest like answers to them.
So Katie earlier had asked if the only reason we didn't like Emerald Amethyst was because we're dirty Americans and we're rebelling against the EU dominance. And realistically, I think it's because of mines. Um, that's like the main reason. Like this is one of the best decks in the format. This is not good against them. If you if
I'd put
you
it
are an
B
S
tier.
tier player and your opponent is a B tier player, you probably beat them more often than not. But they're challenging your characters when they should be questing. Like, they're questing when they should be challenging your characters. Like the tier of player is different. So if you're very good, you might just be skill diffing yourself into a bad deck choice. You might just be making a mistake there. Um, and that's just like you're an aggressive deck, right? So like when the best deck in the meta is this, it's not great to be this. Now when this was the meta, this deck got way better. And I mean let's not kid ourselves. This is going to be up here, right? So like when these are the things and you have a good matchup here, the other problem is at the end of EU, it turned out that this was secretly like the EU matchup. This was the best deck in the format. This was secretly the best thing to play. 50% day two, 50% top
It's
four.
crazy. So crazy.
6 people played the deck, 3 of them made top four. That is insane. Like, that is a dominance. And they were like not even like a team playing the same list. I think they're slightly different lists. It just showed that this actually was good against these lists and people just weren't ready for it. I think a lot of purple or uh Ruby Amethyst players and mains in Europe just swapped over to this to beat this because this beats this traditionally. So this deck got lucky due to the meta shift of 30% of the meta being red blue. This crushed. It dodged this and it won. And that's kind of where it was. But like this is the meta we're in, and in this meta, this is a lot worse. I mean, there's 3 steel decks so far in the top 4. I mean, this is obviously going to change a little when we add more decks to it, but like if let's do this.
One question I have is that how people always said that green purple is like the answer to red blue. If red blue ever takes over, don't people just play green purple and just like punish them for doing that? But honestly, now I don't even know if it consistently wins going second. I feel like it doesn't. Just I'm not sure. I don't know if you guys have tested that matchup much, but just
I
thinking
have,
through the
yeah.
curve, I don't think it
So
can just sneak by them that quickly.
I don't think you're guaranteed the 2-0. I think it's outside of you drawing incredibly poorly. I doubt you'll ever do worse than 1-1. I think you always win on the play against them. And I think you're favored on the draw. Doesn't mean you're going to win each game, but I think like if you do what your deck's supposed to do, 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop, like draw, 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 curve, curve, like you might beat them if they stumble or they don't have the nuts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. And I mean, maybe I'm looking for like something that just doesn't exist in this type of a card game. There's really not that many polarizing matchups where it's like, okay, this deck just 2-0s like this deck.
Traditional versus this right here. Traditional steel song versus this. I feel it's rough to even get the game on the play.
Sure, that is probably one that I could see being that. But honestly, like there's just not a lot of that, and I guess that's a good thing. You don't want just blowout matchups, right?
Well, I think also we're in Continentals now where everybody's a very solid player where two O's are going to be just tough to come by anyway.
Right.
These are people that are
Uh,
all good. I
I
mean,
mean, it's
not
gonna
that saying it's
happen.
impossible. It's
I
yeah, I
mean,
mean,
EU
it
like
has to
the
happen.
right amount happened, right? Like
Yeah, it'll
enough
still
players
yeah.
did it to go 4-0 or 2-0, 2-0, 2-0, 2-0, and then draw into the top 8 of Continentals or
It
draw
will
into day 2
happen
of
for sure.
Continentals. Like
But because variants and card hands and everything, but it's not as easy. But you're right as well. Like it's still going to happen.
Yeah, it's both a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it's a sign that there's balance. And
Katie calling
they,
me out.
that's it.
I was shortcutting by saying this beats this because I didn't want to have to say ruby amethyst or ruby sapphire beats amber steel, but she is right. In an audio format, I butchered it.
Oh, do you not like saying like the
Oh,
just
I
the
just shortcutted because
colors?
I was fumbling in the names in the combos, so I was just like, "Oh, this beats this."
I gotcha. Yeah, it's a bad thing in the sense that everybody wants to find a deck that they feel really good about into the meta, and that usually includes, crushing one or two of the most expected decks. And I think a lot of people are in the boat of they haven't really found that. Like there's really good powerful decks that do what they want to do like every game, but even those decks can't consistently win, 2 out of 3 games. I-
Don't tell Sky, but I'm on red purple for the first time.
Who said that?
Who said that? Who said
Jane,
that?
no. I tried red purple the other day and I hated it like for the first time in a long time. I played versus red blue. I was like, let's see how this actually does into red blue because that was always the deck that people were like, yeah, but red purple beats red blue, so you can't play red blue.
And you crushed
And
it.
I got 3 triggers. I won the game going first. It's like Flynn does work going first,
He
and then
does.
going second, I had a pretty strong Flynn open. Got like 3 triggers off Flynn. Got to like 14 lore, and then just never. It was
Mm.
locked. It was locked down after that. He stabilized, and it was completely fine. I was like, if you can't beat red blue going second, like why am I playing red purple? I'm not gonna do this. Unless red purple is just like straight up broken, I'm not playing it.
It's not going to be set 2 broken, not like set 2.
You hear, and so if you're watching this and you're just hearing someone be like, "Oh, red blue's the best deck ever," and you're like, "Oh, maybe it is." Play it. You want to know what beats a deck? Play that deck. You'll quickly find out what beats you, or you just win everything, right? Like, and then yes, play that deck.
Yeah, theory can only take you so far. I got humbled today. I had an idea to run Maurice's workshop in red blue. I took out like the Maui shark package and put in like 2 Maurice's workshop. And I was like, all right, this makes the matchup better. And
Nope.
I mean, it like made it like somewhat better. Like the games where you go first, you can just completely take over with it. But it was just like super clunky, and I could even if it makes it slightly better, the mirror, I could just tell it wasn't worth like an uninkable, especially when you're not running Quill to get rid of it in other matchups. It just felt super clunky. So I was, it took one best of 3, and I'm off that idea.
I think red purple's A. I don't know. I feel
I,
like it
I
could.
I'd agree like with
I
that,
think
but
it could
it
win
it, it
still.
keeps winning. Like it was only
Yeah.
8% play rate in EU, so there's always that like red purple factor
It's just so
will
consistent
exist.
because the cards. You get so much card draw that I feel like you can make him like it gives you more room to make a mistake because you have so much more options in your hand all the time that like maybe a misplay can be okay. Like or a micro bad decision versus like another decks. Like it feels like you have to really, because you have to make sure you ink right because the card economy is a little bit less. But there, I feel like you got a lot of options all the time. Maybe that's rough, but that's how I feel. But I don't know.
Oh, that sounds right. I think it's a deck that like red purple players I hear complain about that they don't get anything like new or fantastic each set, even though
Genie.
they got Genie, but like they still love to complain. And I kind of understand because when I watch like really good red purple players play, I was watching some of the like the 10K, the CCS, I think is what it's called. It was like Kendall versus the Candia. I was like, okay, I'm curious how this amber steel versus red purple matchup goes. And you could really tell that like red purple was like stretched to its limit as far as like stopping this crazy tempo onslaught that amber steel threw out. And like even when like the candy was like throw like vomiting out just insane amounts of lore, like he set it up perfectly to like take out as much as he possibly could with just like a fox and a brawl or like an Elsa plus something else. And it seemed like the deck was just at its limit of being able to stop some of this like crazy shenanigans that goes on now.
Imagine
That's
being in
fair.
such denial you can't admit Ruby Amethyst is S tier for another meta. Well, the problem is that this beats it. So like these two decks, they beat almost everything else. And like you could argue this beats this, so it should be higher. but this has a better game against this than this does, I think. And if this is S, if this is the best deck in the format, if this is the boogeyman that we have to assume, if no one breaks it, the best players will be playing, you'll have a better chance with this than this. Now, if you think this, and then it's your prediction of the meta, honestly. Like if you like Amethyst Steel, yes, this beats this, but loses to this. Maybe I probably loses to this. Loses to this. And
With this
it
steel, I do
it
have like the
doesn't.
most hope for of having a build that can kind of go toe to toe with everything. Like you're
Yeah,
probably not
it's
gonna
like
be 2-0 in red blue, but I think you could make a version that like has a decent shot at it
I don't even know
while
if you're
still beating
I
Diggy.
don't even know if you're one wanting red blue. That's the main problem. Is that like I think it's impossible to win game two. San impossible's obviously an absolute that's stupid. But like I think the chances of winning game two against red blue with Amethyst Steel is so low that that is why it's lower. Even though it beats the tier one deck, it beats the best play deck that we're projecting in a crazy EU world that's 30%. It loses to the other 40%, right? Like it loses to another chunk. I don't even know how this like if it beats any of these decks, it doesn't do it very well. As far as I know, it beats this deck, it beats this, it beats this. It probably loses
It's
to
an honest
this.
deck. It's gotta earn all its wins.
And
I
by
mean,
this, I
honestly,
mean it beats. Sorry, I was pointing instead of saying it. It beats Amber Steel. It beats Emerald Steel. It beats Emerald Amethyst. Sorry, you were saying?
Diggy Diggy Hole. I like that name.
yeah, I think it's not a great matchup into red blue. Although honestly, like when I tested that this week, and I had not seen that deck in a long time, so it was um it's still quick and it's still dangerous, and on the right things, it's a real problem, and it'll make you sweat it out as a red blue player more than you'd ever want. But um,
Well, all right. So when I say that this is S tier, this is mines. Amber Steel Traditional is A, and Amber Steel Traditional is like right here. And for this, it's basically the same thing. Amber Steel Traditional is very similar to Amethyst Steel, in their matchup spread, except it loses to this, where this beats this. So it's probably here.
Could
It,
you
it's
build Steel Song a version that's more resilient to the Diggy Hole matchup?
yes, and it
you
would
wouldn't do the
make you
queen version,
lose
right?
these matchup. It would make you lose your already bad matchup. Like you'd never win a game two. Whereas in like sometimes if you have everything, you can win. Or, I mean, game one. You can win game one if you have everything. But like if they have the craziness and you stumble at all, you lose game one and you almost never win game two. And I think if you made traditional Steel Song beat the mine version or come 50-50, it makes your Ruby Sapphire matchup just garbage tier, just like absolutely bad. I do think you're advantaged against Ruby Amethyst. Um, I think that this matchup's interesting and could probably be unfavored because they have Pete's and they have all of your removal as well, but instead of singers they have bounce. So like if you're on the play and you have tempo, you could beat them. If you're on the draw and you have tempo, you might beat them. But like I still think that the if you don't have it all early, they win the mid to long game without like a bunch of whole new worlds. Um I never like playing against Blue Steel with Amber Steel, even when it's favored. Supposedly Daisy makes it that way, but Sky and
That's the
RMB
that
always just crush me whenever I play traditional into a Blue Steel. So I just assume I always lose to it, even if it's good.
so
And
that is
then
a good question I have is can you build Steel Song with 4 Daisy, and if so, what other inclusions do you have in it to kind of pair with that? Because
so I
It was
played
the last form,
against
yeah.
yesterday I played against 2 or 3 people who were playing a mine version of a whole new world. Like they had like the Ursulas and Zeuses and Ariels, but also had like Daisies and Mines and Lilos. And as Diggy Hole, I just stomped them. It felt worse than normal traditional or Mines. It made the deck just even worse overall. I don't know why. Maybe I just drew really well. I might have been on the play to each game, so if that's the case, then that's like almost worth disregarding. It's hard to say.
I always felt like like 4 of Daisy would help the Mind Mirror, just because if you're going second, you can play something that doesn't just die to Cindy Sing Storm or Cindy Sing Strength. It's like my whole thing with that mirror matchup is it's so polarizing, because if they drop a Cindy on one going first, what do you play? If you're not playing a Daisy, it's just going to get blown up, or it could get blown up. It's like really tough. Even your 2 drop, like that's another issue. Is like, say you play Cindy to follow up their Cindy, they sing a Storm, they kill your Cindy. Okay, next turn they play a character. Next turn you play a 2 drop, and then next turn they play a 3 drop, and they can sing a Strength to kill your 2 drop that you played. And all of a sudden they have 3 characters and you have none, and they only had to give up 1 card because the Storm replaced itself. So that mirror is like, it might be so lost that you don't even try to tech for it super heavy, because it's just whoever, if they open up a Cindy going first and you have the proper songs, there's just not much you can do.
The crushing thing with if you're playing the steel song like the traditional version and then you drop Daisy, like what there's 4 mines and then 8 songs, so they have 48 cards that they could probably get that's a character, and you're actually just feeding them with Daisy. Versus with you, the traditional, they have their Daisies, and there's you have 20 songs, or, you have 20 things that aren't, and so you're not getting fed as much, and even maybe the things that you want to see can be sent to the bottom. Which
Sure. And I
that was frustrating. Like when I was testing it last format of trying to do like it was like, oh, this felt awful.
Oh, for sure. And I think if you're going second, and you're playing the Daisy, just you're playing it just because it doesn't die to
Yeah,
whatever song they sing with Cindy. You're playing it because it buffs up your strength when you can sing a
yeah,
strength,
maybe, yeah,
maybe
just don't turn it
a
sideways. Yeah, that's
tempo.
fair.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you don't want to feed them cards like you said in that scenario. But it doesn't die, so I mean, you could. Some people I've seen play the little sticky Mickey, the 1 drop, for that same reason. That one doesn't.
The resist
That,
one.
yeah, that one's kind of the same thing, right? I guess it's 1 less health effectively, but it doesn't die to storm. So
Yeah, it's fair. Yeah.
Keep going. I'm trying to fix our issue really quickly.
Mm. Red Bull.
well,
I
I,
mean,
I think red blue needs to be an S. I think that's an eyesore for me looking at this, but I think it's just way too good against everything now. It used to be like hyper aggro just went under it, and that was a problem. And also red blue or red purple was kind of an issue because of Flynn, and you had locations. You had curves like where you'd play Flynn would trigger like 3 times, and then you'd go into a castle. So when they finally got to like a be prepared, or their board wipe Sisu, they still had the location that was ticking for 2, and that was like
yeah.
enough to get them to the spot where then they're like looking to just play goats and bounce goats, and you had a really good matchup. But now it's like they don't play locations, at least for now. That is a question I have: is will people bring back Queen's Castle? Will people start playing Library again to kind of combat that matchup? I don't even know personally if it helps a whole bunch, but
Yeah,
um,
Diggy Diggy Hole has kind of held the hyper aggro amber amethyst, because now that matchup's horrible into Diggy Diggy Hole,
right,
and
yeah, you
and so
can't
yeah, that
play.
does help red blue. Yeah,
The, there's so many decks that gatekeep these like hyper aggro decks that like even if they were able to play them, it's not looking great, to be honest, for it. So
yeah,
it doesn't
big
have
bats.
an inherent weakness anymore. Is essentially what I'm getting at, and
That's a good
that's really
point.
good when you're the deck that has the ultimate game plan of just I ramp and stabilize and I beat
Yeah.
everything. So
Sorry, I just noticed Voices Fire Emblem weapon triangle thing. It's like, yes, like it kind of is that way, and that's the thing, is like a lot of these rankings are it's almost meta dependent, because it is like rock paper scissors, and it's like really based on where something else is and projected, like how much you think it'll see based as how good it will be.
No. doubt.
So I
Uh,
added the extra amber steel, so this one's mines, and this one's this. You saying you want this up here?
Oh, yeah, I think it's definitely S tier. It's one of I've tested a lot of mines versus it because mines is very fast. You should win going first, which you do most of the time. But they definitely have a much better chance winning going second than you do going second. You going second as a mines deck is like if you don't drop triple daisy, like you have no chance
feels
pretty much.
bad.
They just if they do their standard curve. So,
Mm.
but sometimes if you have a somewhat mediocre start, you don't have your super aggro stuff is steel going or mines going first. That opens the door for red blue to have a good hand and kind of come back and win that game going second.
I feel
So
like the good players too now because they've seen and prepped Diggy Diggy Hole. Like Lilo was really good, and now I feel like all the good players, like when I've been testing, like are really good about playing around it, where they can just hold and stabilize without even having to go to B prep, and then they can just wait on that Sisu. They can do enough to just stop you from turning sideways.
I mean, there's a reason they only play 2B preps and 3 Sisu. Like, Sisu is much better against that list. Like, and the Lilos, though, in my mind, I like them a lot against Ruby Amethyst. Other people have been like, whatever, they have Maui's, they've got Fox, and they don't matter. I'm like, yeah, sure. But if they're playing a Maui the turn after a Be Prepared, like, that's not that bad, right? Like, I'm not only doing a Lilo. If I'm only doing a Lilo, sure, I'm probably losing. But like I should have 4 or 5 ink, and I should have one or two other cards, or I'm drawing another card. I should be able to double card. And then Maui's only answering one, and so I'm still playing something, turning it sideways. Now Maui has to answer this Lilo every turn. And
Yeah,
so like it's not answering my other characters. They have to play another character with rush to then answer my next character that's exerted. Like it it is decent in that matchup, but as you're saying, people are playing around Lilo. That also means you have to play your Lilo correctly. Like, know when to bring it in, when not to bring it in, when do you play it, when do you ink it. Like, just because a card is good in a matchup, this isn't like it doesn't win the game when you play it. It's not Exodia. Like, there are some cards like that. Sometimes that happens. Like, turn 3 wheel when they already have a full board and like 2 lanterns in play, or like that
yeah,
happens.
I
yeah.
hate Lilo. I think that card is so overplayed. I couldn't see myself playing more than one copy. I think there's just so many
That's why
answers
he's
that
not playing mines.
I tried it. No, I've tested mines a lot and I like the deck and I think it's very strong. I just didn't have any situations hardly come up that I was like, yeah, Lilo actually recurred from the graveyard and won me the game because of it. And
like
it's so going back to red purple. Red purple has what they can deal with it. Fox, Maui, Brawl. They typically
Well,
want to save the Brawl for
I
whatever you
wouldn't. Yeah, I
drop.
wouldn't count Brawl in that because Brawl takes out even just a played character, right? Like,
Right, but the idea is if you get to the point where they board wipe you and you're just kind of playing off the top, or maybe have one more double spell left before you're playing on the top, you're in a spot where like Maui and Fox don't hit what you just played, and they really want to hit that, right? So they use their one brawl on whatever you just played, and then they have that leftover ink to play a Fox or play a Maui. So it's like, did the Lilo really do anything? I guess maybe it stopped them from establishing a genie or something instead for one turn, but I feel like that it's just very few games that actually gets you over the edge to where it's worth it. I actually like playing. I think Vanessa is actually a super good alternative for that slot because I think it
I've
helps a
been so
lot.
high on
And
Vanessa.
I'm telling you, man, Vanessa is the way to
You
play
have to play
mines.
Zeus then.
No, you don't have
Like,
to play Zeus. You could play
dude,
one to
I
two Zeus,
am.
but
Zeus.
it
The the
You're
doesn't.
the, the
not. You're
singer
not going to
4.
beat Red Blue on game one. You're going to lose game one
Why?
to
You
Red
have
Blue
you have
because
eight
you're
two
not going
drops
to
that
draw
you
your
like to
Smee.
play.
You're
Yeah, you
you're
play
gonna.
Force Me and Four Piglet. You have 8 2 drops. It's like a standard deck for any matchup. You are gonna hit one of those 2 drops. Just like that's the math.
I mean, there's a reason why we. The math says you play 10 1 drops. I mean, I'm assuming it goes similar for twos, right? Unless you're just counting the ones as an available play for turn two, so you can play less. I
I
mean, you
mean,
have a
if you
lot of
mulligan,
twos, but you don't want to play them.
that's a deck that mulligans really aggressively though. Like if you're going, you'll keep like a Piglet or a Smee, and then just hunt for daisies. If it's not Daisy, I feel like in the red blue matchup, it needs to be Piglet or Smee. So like you're pitching, 5 to 6 cards every hand.
I
you
mean, I
will
found
almost
myself
always
having
find
to
your
keep
two
the
drop
Lilo in that spot.
choice.
Like, I found myself keeping Lilo and moling 6 to try to hit the 1-drop.
I
Lilo
Although
think
that
is
Lilo's
spot, I
I think
still might
Lilo's good
mole
because you have the
all the.
option of it, like, right? Because sometimes, if you don't hit the dock or there's not a ton of card draw or the Rapunzel only drew you
that
one
is the
card,
downside to
that
Vanessa.
yeah,
Lilo is
that
another thing that quests for 2 that you can play on 2. So if you
that Lilo, at least, again, it's recurring options,
it
which
does let you
is fun.
mulligan like more aggressively as well for Daisy because you can if you're playing 12 two drops that quest for 2, then you can pitch
You
all
don't
your
have to
two
keep one.
drops. Right. But I
Yeah.
don't think that's super super big numbers wise for what it's it like not keeping a piglet is or keeping a piglet versus not keeping is not a huge deal as far as hunting for daisies. But I don't know. I think Vanessa helps in a lot of matchups. Not only does it help in the mirror because you can stick things and it's not going to die to storm or strength. I think it's like a great singer versus like anything aggressive. It's also just another Rapunzel target. Like you can storm it Rapunzel. It's like I don't know. I think it's has more upside than potentially Lilo does in coming back from board wipes. I don't think that situation arises super often where it's, hey, I can bring back a Lilo and this kept me in the game because I could play 2 things instead of 1.
I don't think it's a I mean, I haven't tested the Vanessa, but I always liked it in the normal steel song. And I guess being the power of, oh, like I'm mold and now I have this storm, and then now I can, on to I can now have another singer option that's not I can play this Daisy, and if I didn't get Cindy, I now have another option to do it earlier. And in the
Right.
mirror, that does
And
seem really
have a
valuable.
singer while playing Daisy curves on 1.
Yeah, it does feel really valuable in the mirror.
Because imagine this: you go Daisy, Vanessa, Lawrence, sing a strength, and kill their 2 drop going first. Like that's pretty toxic. I mean, it's not as good as a Cindy start in the mirror, like going first, but it's like another way to do that type of thing.
Yeah, and even going second, like if you went Daisy, then it protects from that Storm Ray John in a way that Lilo wouldn't, where they can just take it out.
Yeah, that feels bad getting stormed. You definitely don't want to be playing Lilo going
No,
against that matchup if you can help it.
man, what other decks do we have for our tier list?
Where's Blurple?
Some relevant, some not.
Everybody talks about Blurple. Where is it?
Oh, I was saving the good ones for last. Let's get these ones out of the way. B or C?
Probably B. I'm sure you still will win a lot of games going first just because it's so fast, but probably is hopeless going second into most
I
most
feel like it's bad
decks.
in so many matchups. Oh, you
Sadly,
got
I don't think the Mufasa.
D.
This is another archetype that just hasn't found itself.
I think Mufasa is just a tragedy of power creep. I think he's just like, yeah, you can flip over something, but it's like so slow that cards have gotten good enough to where that tempo is not there.
Yeah, we're talking about Lilo. Same thing for Mufasa, right? Just exerted.
I mean, I think the issue is like in my mind, Mufasa is an anti be prepared card, anti Sisu card, and a lot of people are just like it's a value card. Like they'll trade it, like it's good because they have to trade into it. I'm like, I mean, it's value. It definitely is value, and it's a gambler's card. Like you could definitely hit some gigantic thing, and but in my mind, like you have to play a bunch of bad things in your list. Like some people are like, "Oh, I wanted to hit like this character," and you flip a Pluto. It's like, what? Flip a like flip a Piglet. Oh no! Like that's it's not gonna do anything, right? It's when it flips
Yeah,
the big things like Dragon
Chernabog.
or Mufasa. I've lost where it was Mufasa into Mufasa into Mufasa into a dragon. I was like,
Oh
okay, yeah.
my,
A game that I was so far ahead, I was like, there's no way I'm going to lose. That was how I lost that game.
that's
And
a
I
crazy way
barely
to end.
lost that game. But it was just like, geez, like how? How?
The dragon triggers too, right? Yeah, it's so gross. It's
I
filthy.
mean,
I
it
think
wasn't in one turn.
Mufasa's
Yeah.
also a card that it never feels good going second and playing it because it does nothing for you tempo wise. and your whole deck is built around kind of that card, right? So if you're building your entire deck around a card that doesn't feel great, it doesn't answer anything on what that your opponent's doing going second, then like you need to have some strong alternative game plan built into your deck, which I don't think the deck really does. That's why I think people are playing Steel Fossa now, kind of more than like red yellow, because you do have some defensive answers. Like your game plan is to flood the board with characters each turn. Well, yeah, we can run stuff like strength and all like the steel stuff that can actually be, reactive to some of the stuff that aggro
I
decks are
don't
doing.
think I don't think Steel Fossa play. I think most of the people that play Steel Fossa don't play songs or anything either. I think
Yeah,
they do the
Really?
because yeah,
same. Yeah,
What?
I think they
you
only play
Nah,
can't.
Steel
come
for
on.
Tinkerbells and
I
Docks.
got I got to
They
build Steel
should.
Fossa now. I feel like
Yeah.
that you
Well,
got
because
to
if
run
you
strength if you're playing a curve deck like that has singers.
Hey,
well,
maybe Mufasa is what you should replace Kita with.
hey,
Hey, I mean, it's
that's
interesting.
that's
It
that's
Only 12 cards, right? Like, in
yeah,
my mind, that's fine. 1 out of 6 chance of missing. Like,
and it's a 3/3 quest for two. I mean, it feels better sometimes.
Someone says they play 6 songs in Steel Fossa. What is that, like 4 strength and 2 Zeus or something? Maybe.
I mean, that's what it should be.
But-
One
I,
in
I was
ten.
I always played Lantern in regular. I was fine. I liked I'm fine with missing, as I stated before.
Yes.
Like,
Okay. That makes sense. I think that sounds good. I think that's why would you play Steel Fossa unless you wanted to run strength, in my opinion, in Zeus.
Is it what's next?
Blue purple. We gotta discuss.
It's better than C, right?
It will win the event.
That'd be Blurple players
I
would
mean,
love that.
it's like here, right? It just did well in some event. Oh,
It's a deck
it
that just
does.
has a lot of power and value built into it, but it just doesn't match up well to some of the stuff, and I think it kind of doesn't. Like
All
you
right,
do really you
so
do really strong stuff with it, and you have good cards. It just doesn't quite match well into what
8-drop Elsa's nasty into the into the mines.
it beats
yeah,
Dig. Hmm.
I think it I think it's very good against Ruby Amethyst. It's probably good against Sapphire Steel. It's probably good against Ruby Sapphire. I
It's not
think
good against Sapphire
it's
Steel. I've played the
No.
matchup a bunch.
it's
It's
not okay. So it's good against these ones, but the steel lists, these other 5 decks above it, probably have a favored matchup into it. It doesn't win against Ruby Sapphire. Well, then
It does not.
what's it beat? Just the other Amethyst lists? Is that all it beats? Is it Amethyst decks?
Yeah, maybe some of the rush stuff. No.
I will say the blue purple was a deck that I was kind of interested going into Seattle. I thought there was like a lot of cool stuff that was unexplored with the deck, but I didn't really have the time to dig into what I wanted to. I kind of like
Wait,
the idea of how far I'll go in blue purple, and nobody really liked that idea.
it beats mines. Hmm. I did lose to it at locals, but my draw was
You could have
I
won, bro.
lost I
Let's be
lost
honest.
1-2. Oh, maybe. Yeah, that's true. I did make mistakes in game 3. I did not play around the Baymax. That is for damn sure. For darn sure I did not play around the Baymax.
You
Nor
just
did
need
I
to.
even know what Baymax fully did. So like once it came into play, I then played into it more. Um but like in the one of the games I just didn't draw removal and they played an Yzma. The one that if you have 3 or less cards, draw to 3. They had no cards in hand, played Yzma. I had like 4 cards in hand, drew a 5th card, and I just didn't have any removal at all. And he got to activate Yzma, draw 3 cards, snake it back to his hand, ink something, replay the Yzma, and
Ooh.
like his next turn, like empty his hand, activate Yzma, refill, and like I was like parity slightly ahead, too far behind, and I just stayed behind for the rest of the game and lost. But Sure,
Run by
like it
Yzma,
makes
it
sense. They give,
happens.
yeah, they give you threats. If you don't answer them, you lose. That's
Pull the
worth
lever.
noting if cards that powerful. Yeah.
It's
I
a
always
great
thought
deck
that
name.
that card was an interesting thought experiment versus the library. Because how many situations would you rather have an Yzma than just play a library on 3? They both cost 3. They're both thinkable.
Yzma costs 4.
Yzma costs 4. Okay, maybe
Yeah.
my thought was that you can play the library and you need to move one thing to get a card.
Mm.
So, but I always thought the library was much stronger than Yzma as far as something a card engine. Because you just if you play in all the Chernobog follower, the broom, like
Yeah.
you will draw a lot of cards with library while giving
Yeah.
something that gains lore. It's just
But
is it
when
better
I
than what
saw
you
the
want to be
card,
doing?
and when I first saw the card, I was like, that was when I was still going ham on Doc. And I was like, you know what? Like, this could be what I need in Amethyst Steel Doc. Like, it just refills and refills. But now I think Genie just does that better.
Yeah. I think yeah, you typically want more tempo than playing like a library and spending the one ink tax to move stuff there, all your one drops. Like, yeah, you're gonna draw a lot of cards, but how much tempo did you give up in a matchup where you really can't afford to do that? You'd rather just be putting pressure on.
Inburn
Was
seems
honest.
pretty interesting. Like, treachery, gather knowledge, draw 3. Like, that could, like, yeah, that could be pretty brutal. And our
Or what
last
about
archetype.
yeah, go ahead. I was gonna say something stupid about the 7-drop genie.
Oh, go for it. I want to hear stupid things, so tell it.
I was gonna say, yeah, or build the 7-drop genie and just play a million one drops and have the ultimate Yzma
Oh,
effect, just refill.
I
Oh
forgot that card
no.
existed. I was gonna try to build a storm list with it, but I did. I don't think it exists.
Imagine if they added Storm to Lorcana. That would be like the one mechanic where they probably think they would just never do. And they're like, yeah, let's just do Storm and Lorcana. Why not?
You know, just an action that costs 2 that says gain 1 lore for every card played this turn.
Pretty vicious.
Fair. I mean, I don't think they could really go off too hard. Like,
It would
maybe
items maybe.
whole
That'd
new
probably
world
be the
would be good.
best. Yeah, whole new world
Oh
with
no, it would
items,
be
I
really
guess.
good. Is this the
Um,
cow version?
yeah, this is like Blurple, but uses cows instead of genies. Kind of, it's like rampant a cow.
Bends
I've
my
seen this
will.
list. I've played against it a few times recently on stream. It's kind of like some people play Bend to My Will, but I think more have been just like move or muses with like song interactions to keep you off of characters, and then just questing.
You play muses, bounce everything back, then play bend to my will. That's
Mm.
it's a necessary part of the combo.
I played against one. They're playing Flaversham Ice Block Popsicle and using Ice Block with Under the Sea.
Classic.
A lot of people are playing threes to get around Sisu's, and Ice Block answers that, doing the same.
Yeah, that's like if you remember the day that I brought it to Lord Bacon and Eggs and played, I was like super excited to try it,
I
and
do remember that.
it was just a fragile mess.
That was
And
last set though, right?
that was last set. But you didn't gain much. If you're not playing the bend to my will, like what did you change really? You're still playing just the Clarabelle game plan and muses to bounce stuff.
Yeah,
The
seeing your
problem,
welcome and play bend is pretty nice when it gets to happen.
yeah, I'm sure that that feels insane. And when I heard that people are actually playing, I was like, wait a minute, is this actually like a real thing that's viable? Because I would love to do that. I would love to do
All
the
right, build
shenanigans
it. Let's play it this Sunday. We won't tell anyone how the results go unless it loses.
it's just every the problem of every deck being able to dump their hand gets even worse this set. And yeah, going second, there's decks that can dump their hand. So you cater your whole game plan to ramping into a Clara, and then you get like, oh yeah, I get to draw one card. Yippee! That doesn't feel very good. And there's not a lot of will to bend in a 1 to 2 card hand. So
That's really fair. It does feel counterintuitive to the whole Clarabelle action of why you want it if you're throwing away all your cards at the bend of my will.
yeah, it is like a
Yeah,
non bow, as they would say. But
a non-bow.
everybody says it's such like a crazy like combo deck that you need to play Clarabelle first to get your cards, and then play Bent of My Will. And that when somebody said that, I was like, this deck can't be real. That's just way too much to ask. Like when I was playing the last set, it was enough to just it was a challenge enough to get to a Clarabelle and actually draw some cards from it. And now I have to add on top a 7-cost uninkable action after that to get rid of their cards. No bueno.
Yeah, it feels bad. Is that really B tier? Are we putting in B?
I mean, what deck is it better than?
I would say it's C.
I'm
There's
pretty
no way.
sure
There's
this
no way
is
Lemon
pretty
Lime
sick.
discard is worse than that, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Either we move Lemon Lime up
Didn't
or
this just do well at some of? I've played against this more than I've played against this,
really.
but sure, it'll be
I
the
don't know.
sleeper. People
I
later
can't
will be like, "You're a fool."
I can't say I've seen it. Do you think it worked pretty good?
Eh.
I've seen a clip of R&B getting destroyed by it playing Blue Steel. That's about the extent I've been exposed to this, but
It poops on Ruby Sapphire. That alone should make it out of C into B, right? Any deck that can beat either of these is probably at least B tier.
you guys are undershooting on blue green. I don't know about that, Duke. I think that's a copium hopium deck for sure.
I
We
would
put it
not be
B.
surprised to play against someone on this in Continentals. I would be surprised to play against this, I feel.
I would be absolutely shocked to see somebody on green blue, and then I would
I mean, I
ask
think
them.
one
What?
person in Continentals, maybe two, will play it, is what I'm
That's
thinking.
crazy. I mean, that'd be nuts
I
if
don't
that's
think
the
I'm
case.
anyone will play this.
I'm gonna find that one person and ask them why they played it, and if the answer is not because I wanted to have a chance of making a deep run with blue green, I would be completely shocked. If they actually
Be like,
thought it
it's
was
the
like
best deck in the
meta
format.
call, yeah, that would shock me. But
I don't know. I feel like at Continentals now is not the time to like I don't know, just like die on the if we're on like a Mufasa or Lemon Lime. I don't think now is the time to be like this is the deck I'm willing to throw away my Continentals on. But hey,
I'm
I don't
dying
know.
on the
Voice,
I'm dying on my blue steel hill, so
Well,
have
I
you
feel like at
played the
least
deck, Voice? Have you played it and felt like you lost everything? Like, or are you just beating other people who are on it? Like, you might just be better than your locals. Or they just might not, the people who play that just don't play it right. Like, that's my thought. Like, I think this is probably the second best deck in the format. Does that make it S tier, A tier? I don't know. Same thing. Let's
35% of the
compare.
Europeans brought red blue to the most serious event of the season.
Well,
So
that
it can't be mid, right? Like it
it was
literally
also a reaction to a bunch of Amber Steel, traditional Amber Steel in the LCQ.
I still think about. I bet it'll be about a third will be red blue at this Continentals if I had to guess.
Let's see
30,
what
35%.
the LPN people or what did we oh my goodness. Now it's like opening the McDonald's map from
because
our
one
talk
giant team all bought the
earlier.
same red blue list. I mean that's not really an excuse though. That's a giant team of players that probably grinded more than anybody else, and they came to the same conclusion that red blue is the play.
Well, it
They're not
will
just
change the
excluded
meta
because
of the
they're
event though. It'll change what, like, that's why Emerald Amethyst did so well, was because of that. Like, I wasn't expecting it to do that well into the event. I expected some good players to play it and do all right, but I didn't expect it to just be like a feast for them.
Pete just shuts down red blue.
No, it doesn't.
Pete does not stop the
No, it
core of
does not.
Sisu that they're playing. Is much worse.
It can feel bad sometimes, but I mean, I don't know.
I will say, the going second, there are a lot of spots where your one shot of winning is you like amped into B prep and you're only at 7, and because they played a Pete and they had the foresight to say, okay, the only way I'll lose is if they have
This
B
man
prep.
Pete, yeah, and
They'll
you have the
lose it
Pete
for you.
answer,
But
yeah.
going first though, you can almost always ramp the Sisu without problem before you lose. You don't have to use your 7 ink turn to
And depending on what deck you
stabilize.
have, you may or may not get that answer to the shift Sisu, or now it's available at 6.
That is like an insane gamble, right? With that matchup is they play 4 storm, 4 strength, and 4 mine. But if they just somehow whiff the answer to your little Sisu and you get the shift on 6 ink, you probably just win the game from it.
Yeah, it's over.
Yeah. But honestly, what I've noticed the curve for that matchup goes is you ramp on 2 as red blue, you play like a Grandma Tala on 4, and then you play like a Maui, and then after
That
that
feels great.
you can play two of your 3 cost removals, which is like Brawl and Sisu, because most people are playing like 3 Sisu 4 Brawl. Like
Yep.
that's a lot of 3 cost removal, right? It's pretty often that you actually have 2 of them in your hand. That's like a really strong curve to deal with anything aggressive actually, because not only did you play Maui last turn that probably survived, you have Tala that probably can hit stuff. Like that's a pretty strong curve that can stop stuff going seconds.
And sometimes the double ramp
Can't find a
into
place I want to put it. We'll just put it here.
like you hit double ramp brawl, so that can go crazy sometimes too.
But it didn't convert well. Red blue did not convert well. What was
It
the
didn't.
conversion rate of red blue?
It wasn't a great conversion rate, that's for sure. It got feasted on the red purple, had a great one, and then the emerald amethyst messed it up. But I don't remember what it exactly was.
Is it ever a problem that like the most played deck though kind of has skewed data because maybe
Slightly.
there's like there's more mirrors then, right? And like if the mirror is like almost always a 1/1, you're not going to see. Maybe that doesn't affect it too much, but if you're more likely to go 1/1 versus the mirror, then it's probably less likely to make top cut. 2 made top cuts, maybe 3. That seems awful. What is top cut though? That's not day 2. I don't know. I think red blue is pretty insane. Top
I think
16.
it's a good to get
I mean, 2 to 3 in top 16. That's not bad. It
35%. How many people are there?
doesn't match up with the 35%, but there's 128. So if there was 2, that's what, 20 or 10%. No, not even 5%.
Yeah.
I can do math. Yes,
So
that's not great, but
Yeah.
out of the tiers here, they rated the top best 10 decks in the format. A bunch of different players are polled, and they put this out every 2 weeks. So this is a little old. It's like, not
no, it's
even
20%.
a
What am
week
I
old,
talking
maybe.
about?
25 people voted, I guess, on this one. I think we came up with the same thing with here, but they put Ruby Amethyst ahead. They put that there. So that's fair. Like there was some disagreement there. Some of chat probably would have rather had Ruby Amethyst over Ruby Sapphire. They still like Amethyst Emerald though. They have it way higher up than we do. So maybe Katie's right. Maybe this poll has a bunch of EU players. At least they have a bunch of players who don't play against Steel players. We both of them also had Amethyst Steel fairly high. And I was surprised we actually had a fourth. They had it at fifth. We just have the Emerald Amethyst super low. Then they have Emerald Steel above here. Now, to be fair, we have Emerald Steel twice. We broke into 2 archetypes, or they just have the one, but it's obviously mines.
Yeah.
They don't have Blurp. Well, they do have Blurple in 8th, also right below Blue Steel, which we have right above it. They also are kind of showing respect towards this. They have no respect for Emerald Sapphire, as they put Mufasa basically above it. They also had no respect for Emerald, Amber. So we were kind of close. Just a big disagreement in Emerald, Amethyst, and then a disagreement on Ruby, Sapphire, and Ruby,
Yeah.
Amethyst's like lineup. What do you think of that?
What do you want to, if you're playing red purple, what do you want to bring? Like, I guess what matchups are you looking to hit? Is it just an all rounder deck? Is it just the
I mean, you're 40%
um?
against everything.
It's the Murktide of Lorcana. That's what I'm looking for. Is it
I
like the
think
deck
the
that
boomers call it Jund, but
just outskill them somehow? Sometimes I feel like that with blue steel. Like I think our matchup numbers aren't great this set going into Continentals, but I'm like, well, I'm just so familiar and I just know what to do with every mulligan that I'm hoping that's like shoots me over that 3% or whatever that I'm missing. I don't know.
I think that's a fair assumption. Again, these people have been, red red purple's been here since, set 2 really with the bounce package. And again, I think again the consistency in card draw, and then the addition of Genie, it's it's good. And I think that moving away from the finders keepers, now that Emerald Steel, maybe they don't feel as much of a threat. They've moved away from finders keepers. It's helped out in the red blue matchup in a way that maybe that hurt them in the last, in DLC Seattle. So
Yeah. I think it is that deck, but it's just like, man, if you sit down and take a look at your matchups of what you want to hit, it doesn't feel great not seeing anything that sticks out to you. Like, man, if I just hit a couple of these, like I'm probably in a good spot.
yeah,
Like it being blue steel, like there was always matchups that I was like, yeah, man, if I just hit these, like I'm in a great spot. And there was, I think it was Texas. There was a ton of green steel, and I didn't hit a bunch of it, but it was nice to like think like statistically I should hit 3 of my rounds, hit this matchup where it's a very good chance I 2-0, and like red purple just doesn't have that at all. I feel like.
yeah. I felt like blue red last format, and Emerald Steel was awesome. In the DLC, just feel like you put Hiram down and you win.
Yeah. That was a matchup that I heard the most differing opinions on. Some people thought that blue steel was completely fine with the deck and it was favored. And some people thought that amethyst or not green steel was completely favored.
Hmm.
And the whole format I heard it back and forth. I
You
came to the
talking
conclusion
Bucky?
that it no,
Post Bucky.
Seattle format.
Hmm. I felt very unfavored.
I know
Yeah.
you
So
you were one of the
yes,
people that said that in all your testing that it felt unfavored.
But it was mostly against you, and your version of Blue Steel was vastly different than all the other versions that were played, and those were the ones that people were like, we're beating it. And I was like, oh, you're beating it? What did you do when they had broom and cannon and sword? And they're like, oh, they didn't play those. I'm like, well, sure, when they're not singing swords and they're not cannoning and playing broom, it's probably a favored matchup. But you were like, I'm not losing to Diablo, and
Yeah,
that's
that
that.
matchup was very good. We were talking about red blue though. Red blue versus green steel.
Oh, it's unfavored, but you can win if you like. So if the red blue player, if the ruby sapphire player does not know what they're supposed to do, you can just wipe the floor with them. And that was like a big thing with like what Zan did is he like developed a way to trap them, because there was like two schools of thought as the ruby sapphire player. You either went ham on Hiram, or you emptied your hand with all your ramp and you're like, well, I'll just top deck something big and win. And that's how you beat the discard deck like the set before that. But then once this version came out, as Caleb's shaking his head no, is once this new
yeah,
version came out and Zan's like, oh, you're gonna do that? Well, you're gonna lose. Like you're just gonna lose. So they realized that they just have to mull everything for Flaversham. It's just like Flaversham or lose. And once they started doing that more aggressively, it was harder to just beat them. Like I had to get super lucky. And my opponent had to not have a B prep or a Sisu on top of their top like 5 or 6 cards for 2 turns for me to win. I literally just went all in and was like, if you have it, you have it, and I lose, but there's no way I can win the game any other way but overcommitting 3 Prince Johns in a play and hoping you don't answer it. And they didn't answer it. And I got lucky.
I only saw one, Emerald steal the whole DLC, which was sad because I was like, yeah, that was great. You just you ink quill people. If you quilled and you like you said, dump the hand, then it's just bad. But if I was literally just if I keep my cards in hand, I can win.
Reminds me of the good old Bucky format with when I played Blue Steel. It was like, okay, yeah, we can either go Flaversham or, like you said, just dump the hand and pray. And there are so many games where I was just like, okay, Cogsworth or Tinkerbell's off the top, and we win this game, or Sword. And
Yeah.
it happens a decent amount of times, like enough to where it doesn't feel bad for sure.
All
I've
right,
always
I think.
Yeah, we crushed it with the tier list. You wanna, I guess,
Yeah,
wrap up this
we
video or this one?
We can easily. I think that's finishing for
Yeah.
this first half, this first
Yeah.
segment. So we can let's lower this screen here, and then we can just jump in. And it's like, why don't you take it off? What's your favorite Lorcana memory from this last year?
Cool. We're not leaving, but here's our. Let me do the outro, I guess.
We can just record
Actually,
that
do
later.
we want to wrap up
I'll
for
record it
tonight?
later.
It's getting
Do you need
kind
to go
of
to
late.
bed? I was fine with staying just
I
for this last part, but if you need to go to bed, we can.
I probably need to take off, to be honest. This took a little bit longer than I was expecting, so
No worries. Continentals. We said last time we picked what would be the most represented. What are we gonna say?
I don't even remember what it was. I don't even remember what we predicted. We haven't.
I
Even
was
put that
the
video
only
up.
one that predicted. I predicted, and then you guys were like, "Well, let's wait." I'm pretty sure that's what happened. I said red blue. I said it was going to be the most represented and what was going to win. And I think I'm sticking with my guns. I think red blue. And
I think
with more
Ruby,
testing done.
Right now, I think a lot
insane.
of people are going to play Ruby Amethyst. It was the most played deck at the last event, right?
Yep.
But it also did well.
Yep.
That's the issue. So it's like, so is this next event going to be another one that it's the most played deck and then it gets stomped because people prep for it? Or are people going to preemptively meta? Like, that's a lot of things that could happen.
Please bring red purple. That's a matchup that I want to see so badly. Without castles, leave the castles still.
Leave the castles at home.
That's the only card I was scared of, and now people put Genie in. I can handle Genie.
I would say red purple is the most. Again, I said that was the most represented last time. I'll say
Two red purples and red blue. All right.
Yeah.
You're not changing your mind. You still think it's red blue?
I still think it's red blue. From my experience and what I've gathered talking to people about that are going to this event, a lot of people have got that kind of sour like doomer mindset hovering around this deck, and that's usually indicative of they've tried a lot versus it and they've played a lot versus it, and there's just not really great stuff to do versus it. And it might not be just this like insane tyrant of the format that you'd expect if like I'm talking about a deck like this, but it is a not good place to be to have that type of aura around a deck for sure.
I mean, I assume that's like why these are the way they are, kind of, right? Like, that's why so many people here voted for this, is because maybe in their world, like, they see that doom and gloom of this and they expect this to crush it, right? But at the same time, if that's the case, they voted 2 other decks like above it.
Yeah.
Oh, wrong one.
Could be.
So it's like
maybe
hard to say.
Maybe enough people found the answer, or maybe enough people were just like, screw it, I'll lose to red blue and beat everything else.
Fair enough.
But I think the EU champs has been the first time that I've seen a team all play the same list, or at least heard of it coming from a big team anyways. Like I'm sure there were like small squads of 3 that all ran the same deck, right? But Labyrinth has yet to do that. I don't think Luxury has. I think 1 or 2 people on the Luxury played the Luxury Burn, but not the full squad. I don't think. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe they did have the whole squad run that, and Jonathan was just did the best.
For red blue, what does that even look like? Is it just one person runs Great Stone Dragon and one person doesn't?
What do you
How
mean?
much variance in red blue can you actually play? Is
Well,
it
I'm
just
just meaning like the whole team plays the same archetype. It's like normally
Oh, I
Labyrinth
thought you
is
meant
like
like the
we're all
exact
different
same
archetypes.
60. Okay,
Oh,
I get you.
I mean, sure, there's going to be like a one. I think even with Luxury on the burn, there was like a couple card differences,
They
like
ran
personal
Flynn Rider
preferences.
and Manners. Whoa, okay, that is more different than I would have expected.
Oh yeah, that was them trying to feast in the mirror as well, right? And that was why one of the red blue lists that made day 2 was that one. I think
Was
that's
he
number 1
was
seeded
he
day
part
1.
of the team that brought red blue? All right,
I
guys,
think
bring
so.
red blue, and then I'm gonna tech for the mirror super hard. That's the classic
Oh, I think the whole
TCG
team
event.
teched for the mirror, but yeah, just like one dude
Just
techs
one guy's
against
like,
his
I'm gonna get
friends.
y'all.
Many a friendship have been ruined over pulling
I
that
mean,
move.
that's what it's like for the small set. Like for this game, that'd be like the set champs, right? Like I'm going to a set champs. I know Steven's gonna be there. I know Sean's gonna be there. I know Sky's gonna be there, and probably Caleb now too. I'm just gonna predict him to be on red blue. So like I could meta for what I expect that to be, right? And I do to an extent. Like if I'm gonna be playing for a $500 card, and I already know what half the players are probably gonna play, and that's gonna be the thing here is like there are people making spreadsheets that have every qualified player and what deck they qualified with because that's almost all public information. You just have to go out there, find it, and put it together. And then you could be like, well, if you predict these players to play the same archetype, like I'm always like, I don't play the same thing. And I look back and it's like, wow, I played Emerald Steel in 4 DLCs out of 6. I played Amber Steel in the other 2. It's like, I guess I'm a one trick. But like, I almost played other decks at all of these that were different.
Yeah, I I don't think doing that at like a local event is like that bad. But if you're the part of the same team and you do like a team
Yeah,
kill like that, like
That's
that's
messed
messed
up.
up.
That's
That's
like
messed
messed up
you
up.
for
should
sure.
probably not be on the same team come the next big event, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah,
But
most
there's
likely.
needs to
That'd
be
be
some
so whack.
repercussions.
Only 13 uninkables. That's not very many.
Although I was pretty salty when you brought red blue to the first store championship. That was you, not only did you bring red blue and when it wasn't played super heavy, it was like you played like what was it called? The 3 cost ramp card. It was terrible. The Moana one. And that was
I
hard
loved
harder
that
to
card.
Fidi.
I
He was playing
loved
harder
that
to
card.
Fidi.
I played
That
hard.
card
That
was
was at
like
the beginning.
I
Is that
guarantee
pay
like
one
it's
and then
pay
you get
two.
pay
Pay two
two?
for an ink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very, very good in the mirror and against red purple and blue steel in like the midish games. If they're whole new worlding, you don't have to. It has its moments. It obviously didn't stay in the list, right? Like it wasn't good enough in the long
So
run.
slow. But yeah, it did own me when we got paired in
Someone said they
Swiss.
played it in the blue steel mirror for the mirror. That same card.
That's some commitment right there.
That's hilarious.
I definitely played that deck because I knew you were going to be there, and there was another
Oh, I
person who
know.
was
I for
playing blue
sure.
steel or something, and I was like, I can't play Amber Steel. I am just going to lose to him. I'm not going to do it. Like, fine, I'll play this awesome other deck.
I was fine with it, but I asked you when I got there what you were playing, and you said something else, and I told you what I was
I
playing, and then I sat
Well, I
down
already
and
knew what
put,
you were playing. To be
and you were
fair,
playing that.
I already knew what you were playing. And I think at that moment when you asked me, I was going to play that. But I had also told you I had 4 decks in my bag. And I wasn't 100% sure. Like, I did have the
It was like
choices.
4 minutes before they started.
I walked over there to the other side of the room. I walked back, and I can't remember what it was I saw, but it was just like it was either mirror matches or decks that was good against red, that red blue was good against, and decks that would beat what I was thinking of playing, which was, I think, amber steel. I think I also had red purple, and maybe I only had 3.
I think the
I think it
most
was
tournaments I've played with is Emerald
steel,
Steel
maybe?
was the most. Green Steel I've played the most, but I'm messing around with a bunch of different colors. So I just play what I think's the best.
Well, apparently you're known for whatever you do the best with.
That's fair. That's fair. Red blue.
I think I don't even know if I got a promo in that event.
I'm pretty sure he did.
Oh, that was the top 8 gets a promo, or just the top 4?
It's just top 4. It's always been top 4
Maybe I didn't get a play mat.
up until Mirabelle, last one.
No, I don't think either. I think I lost in the first round of top 8 to Green Steel or something, or to.
I can't remember. That was so long ago.
Forever ago.
It's literally a new year.
Thank you guys for watching another installment of the Lore Report. We're your hosts, Sky, Wonderland, Caleb. It's been a great time, and I cannot wait for Continental Championships. It was a great time hanging out with y'all.